This series of videos is about learner differences. So we have this institution called education. People come into education, and what we in the past have done is we've assumed that everybody in the classroom is more or less the same. We've sorted them out by age, we've sorted them out by ability, we've sorted them out by all kinds of things. And our working assumption in the classroom is that the people we have in front of us are more or less the same. Well, the answer is they're not. And the sorting processes are problematic, and that what we have with differences is both a failure to recognise identity, but also we live in a surrounding world where there are a lot of inequalities, where our refusal to recognise differences and to deal with them often reproduces those inequalities. So this is a big problem in education. So what we're going to try to do in these videos is we're going to try to firstly unpack conceptually this notion of learner differences. In fact, in theoretical terms, in conceptual terms, in categorical terms, this is a really complicated idea, and it's in fact one of the reasons why we try not to think about it much, because the minute we start dealing with it, it becomes more and more complex, more and more fraught. So we're going to think about the concepts of differences, both in social reality and the way in which those differences then impact upon what we do in the classroom. We're also going to talk in some general practical terms about what we might then do in the classroom. That's the point we're going to get to towards the end of the videos. It's not a specific set of formulae, it's not a specific set of answers, it's a set of general principles that we want to get to around something that we want to call inclusive education. But along the way through this narrative, we're going to give a very specific and perhaps very edgy, out there, unusual example. Mary and I have been involved for several years as evaluators in a project in northern Greece, where the aim of the project has been to try to get more Roma children. Roma is the Greek word for what in other in English is sometimes called gypsy, to get more Roma children to go to school. And so we were evaluators on this education project. But it kind of gives us a way to take what will be for many people viewing the video a very distant example, and to try to illustrate some of the complexities of these concepts of learner differences. And what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with a definition of a gypsy from the Oxford Dictionary. This is the first edition of the Oxford Dictionary. The Oxford Dictionary, just by way of a kind of trivial aside, the first edition actually took 40 years to publish. So they started with the letter A, as you would expect, and the first letters of the alphabet were published in the late 1880s, and then the final version down to the last letters of the alphabet, X, Y, Z, that wasn't published until 1928. So this huge 40-year project. Anyhow, part of the way into the project, the letter G was reached in a volume that was published in 1901. So this is an old definition, but it's a kind of interesting one, because what it does, it illustrates a lot of what's really problematic about these concepts we use. So when we use the word gypsy, well, this is what the Oxford Dictionary says it means. It says, a member of a wandering race. What's a race? I mean, a race is a biological category. It's a group of people who are all the same. I mean, it's something out of nature. By themselves called Romani. Interestingly, actually, this is the word Rom today in Greece, or Roma in Greek, is even the Oxford Dictionary in 1901 was admitting that they call themselves Romani. They don't necessarily call themselves gypsy. Hey, these categories, these words where we describe ourselves, they're complicated. Of Hindu origin, well, that's a funny concept, because none of them were Hindu, actually. There's an interesting story about this, and that is that, gypsies, Rome, whatever they were called then or now, don't have any self-understanding of coming from India. And anyhow, what does Hindu mean? Hindu is a religion. So these categories, what messy, problematic things they are. And they appeared in England. Well, of course, Oxford English Dictionary's English-centric. It's not when they appeared in Europe, it's when they appeared in England at the beginning of the 16th century, and are believed to have come from Egypt. Well, Hindu origin from Egypt, what are we talking about? This doesn't make sense, really. And in fact, the root of the word gypsy is Egyptian, right? So they came from Egypt. There's no evidence that they ever came from Egypt, and Rom don't have any self-understanding of ever having come from Egypt. So anyhow, but this is what the root of the word was. The people who encountered these folk in Europe called them gypsies because they thought they'd come from Egypt. Okay. They have dark, tawny skin, so now we're talking race, now we're talking classical stuff around phenotypes and skin colour, and black hair. They make a living by basket making, horse dealing, and fortune telling, etc., and usually been objects of suspicion for their nomadic life and habits. The language called Romani is greatly corrupted dialect of Hindi. Again, this actually is something that was decided in the 18th century by a number of linguists. I'll talk about that a bit more later. And a large mixture of words from various European languages. So that's definition number one. But also metaphorically, a gypsy is a cunning rogue, definition number 2A. 2B, so when you want to use this word as a term of contempt, you might also describe a woman that way as being cunning, deceitful, fickle. Okay, so we've got these negative connotations that comes with the word and get transferred into the rest of English. I've left a couple of definitions about now. We'll just now go to number 5, which is resembling what is customary among the characteristics of gypsies, often applied to open-air meals or picnics. So these are nomads who eat outdoors and all that kind of stuff. This is actually, in a way, quite a beautiful romantic photograph, which I came across in an online repository in a university library in the United Kingdom. This is an English gypsy family, and in fact, what it is, it's the romantic view of the gypsy caravan. There are people who live in the caravan who are eating outdoors, live outdoors. They're itinerant people, and if any of you have read The Wind in the Willows, the famous English story from the early 20th century, children's story. The characters in that get a gypsy caravan and they become gypsy-like, and the allure of the gypsy becomes. So look, we have these kind of negative and positive connotations that go around this concept of gypsy.